All right, everyone, it's time to weigh in on the Boston free speech rally slash so-called counter-protests, Antifa's actions there, Trump's response. There's a lot to cover in regards to Boston. It was sort of like there were people organizing in Dallas and everyone's eyes were on Boston at the time, where several tens of thousands of people gathered. The first thing is that the rally that was held there was not a hate rally. It was an actual legit free speech rally. The person primarily speaking there happens to be of Indian origin. Not exactly the face of racial supremacy in the United States. Very garden variety Republican running for the Senate. And if you look at his own footage that he's posting on Twitter, he's flanked by people waving such signs as Black Lives Do Matter and Smash Monsanto. That doesn't... I'm scratching my head as to how that's a neo-Nazi rally. I think that looks more like a progressive rally to me. Now, they had already left, and then everyone else converged. And the so-called counter-protesters shouldn't be called that. They should be called protesters, because there was no protest for them to counter-protest against. They were simply protesting bigotry and this particular rally. Now, the media jumped the gun, and I don't think they realized the form that the free speech rally took, because they tried to brand it like a Klan gathering or something. And it wasn't. It was basically somebody who's not white addressing people who largely appeared to be a group of progressives. They just happened to not like the censorship and anti-free speech sort of thing. But that being said, those that were protesting against that rally have the right to do so, even if their basis is totally wrong. Like, I think they were expecting to meet a couple dozen dudes from the Klan or something, or like some neo-Nazis there, and instead they had departed and there were never any hate groups there, actually. I think Shiva, which is a cool name, by the way, who's the dude speaking at that rally, I think he mentioned that there were some nationalists there, but he's also like, yeah, there are progressives and everyone else here. By nationalist, does he even necessarily mean racial nationalists, though? It could just be a couple of Trump populists with MAGA hats. Those aren't skinheads. Not the same thing. For anyone who is wondering, no, not everyone wearing a MAGA hat is a bigot. Some are, but then again, some people with black masks and communist flags are bigots too. And then you saw a little bit of violence down in Dallas. Some BLM members got into it with Antifa, and one of the Antifa members actually punched one of these people in the face for getting, I guess, too close to him. They were like, take your masks off, take your masks off, they were chanting. And then the Antifa members, obviously, they didn't like that very much. They didn't like being stood up to by people, black advocates, actual black advocates, as opposed to Antifa, which uses racial issues as a reason to harangue and throw stuff at the cops. And they did. And with Trump's response, he applauded the protesters, by which he probably means both the pro-free speech rally and the so-called counter-protesters, because they were all peaceably assembled. Meanwhile, notably absent from this is Antifa, which he calls out in a separate tweet saying, oh, it looks like there are a lot of attacks on police today. Well, that was Antifa. That wasn't just some regular protester doing that, some random person on the street. It was a group that's dedicated towards attacking police, attacking basically anyone else, including apparently BLM, who happens to be standing up to them at the time. Basically, what Antifa wants is to be able to rove through the streets smashing windows and burning cars, and anything that comes in their way, even if it was a bunch of liberals trying to defend their property, they'll attack them too. That's basically how they function. And the media defending them is hilarious. They're going to regret that in the fairly near future, I think. Trump is pulling a slick maneuver on them and making the alt-left look as bad as it really is, and it'll probably work. So Trump's response was that move to the center that I mentioned not even 24 hours prior. That prediction has already come true. Trump is making a centrist swing of sorts, but it's not really centrism. Part of it is just economic populism, but that's not really connected to the moral issues we're talking about here. The only people who would oppose that, generally speaking, are anti-capitalist movements. Not that we've had capitalism in this country for a long time. He's arguing for less socialism, I think, as opposed to actual capitalism, which is an improvement, but again, as I said, mild reformer, lackluster in that department. Morally, though, there's something else to be said. Trump is making a big swing to try to outflank the media and the Democrats that right now have piled on in support of anti-free speech maneuvers by the tech world, twain with anti-police violence especially, and vandalism from the far fringes of the left. They're supporting that now. But Trump's not supporting similar behavior on the right. And so he's taking the moral high ground. He'll continue to do so, and he'll browbeat his foes accordingly. And that's a great political strategy. It'll probably work. People who say, oh, Trump has done this time, I think he's just gotten started. But we'll see if I'm right. You know, you don't have to listen to me. You can think whatever you want about Trump. But he's not a fascist. He's not a bigot. Antifa calls Democratic presidents fascist too. Doesn't really matter who it is. They could be. Bernie Sanders would have been called a fascist by Antifa. Or at least they would have said, oh, he's a half-assed capitalistic sellout or something. It's just the way they operate. And to see the CNNs and salons defending him, oh, you walked right into Trump's trap, which is exactly what he's been setting for you for months. Notice how they haven't talked much about Russia lately. They're too fixated on something else. That distraction really plays to him. But yeah, the free speech rally was free speech. It wasn't a Nazi rally of any kind. The so-called counter-protesters were lawfully assembled. They must be applauded for that. They showed restraint. They weren't the ones attacking police. They didn't attack the free speech ralliers. They didn't attack anyone. They just stood around saying we don't like bigotry. First clear case of them exercising their right to expression, their right to peaceably assemble and so forth, as opposed to Antifa, which is the odd man out and was conducting violence against the police that were there just to make sure that things remain peaceful. They then look an ass through that behavior. That's it's the simple explanation of that. The one group that suffers under the situation in Boston and in Dallas is Antifa. Like, did any Klansmen actually show up in Dallas? I don't think they did. I think it was just it turned into just a general rally against hatred and political violence. And the only political violence to be had there was involving Antifa. Oh, that's not going to look good for their little organization now, is it? You know, a lot of people are really, really bad at political strategy. That's why they think Trump is like, he's a sellout now. Well, when did he wine and dine Nazis? The only original claim of that was from the far left, which hates Donald Trump. And the people who are actual like skinheads, they gobbled the line up. Ooh, MAGA, praise Trump. Like he was ever going to do what you want him to do. It's like some of these, I keep seeing an ever inclining number of supposed illegal immigrants within this country. The official number is like 8 to 10 million. And then during the election, when I would say that, and I'm like, well, he's not going to deport all 10 million of those people. You know that. They said, oh, it's more than that. It's actually 15 million. Then I saw 20 million. The last night I saw 35 to 50 million. What's the next number I'm going to see? 10,000 million illegal immigrants in the United States? I think you're not exactly sourcing your claims. I don't even bother asking for a source because it's probably like David Duke's blog or something like that. So I'm not interested. I don't fucking care. But yeah, people have a right to assemble peaceably. Regardless of their views, they can have hate-filled views all they want. They can still assemble peaceably. Rendering them to the one-dimensional and saying, well, they have out their views, therefore any time they take an action, it must be informed directly by their bitterness and hate. That's not the way people operate. That's propaganda when you see that. Rendering things to the one-dimensional is the most explicit form of propaganda you can have because it attempts to prevent any debate over individual actions taken by a person in favor of just relegating them to basically a very linear storybook character. Oh, this person has they're in Antifa, therefore when they make their breakfast cereal, it must be a symbol against capitalism in some way. When they take a crap, it must be, some sort of statement against capitalism or something. That's not the way that things work. People have normal lives outside of their political views all the time. Like, I don't go around, I talk about politics all the time here on YouTube. I don't go around in my day-to-day life haranguing everybody I meet saying, you better become a libertarian, the authoritarians are coming, we need free speech, because that would make me a nut. It'd be taken as evidence that I'm a lunatic. They'd probably be right if I was doing that. No, in my day-to-day life, I'm like, I'm going to go walk in the woods. I'm going to go tend the garden or something. I'm going to do some Minecrafting. That has nothing to do with politics. Rendering people to the one-dimensional never works. And the moral panic over, free speech is empowering hate groups. No, it's not. No, it's empowering the people that are talking out against them, as you see in Boston, even though there was no hate group there to speak out against. That's a good thing. You should love liberty. You should love the free flow of ideas, because when those ideas are exposed for the public, they can then argue against them, and that's the whole fucking point. That's about all. Peace out.